Okay, hello again. This is now tarot lesson number 89, and I've been putting off doing it because I'm not quite sure what I'm up to or what I'm doing with it. Normally when I do a video, I've got an idea of a beginning and I sort of know the point that I want to make. This time I'm not quite sure. I'd like to talk more about 1 and 2 and wholeness and the reflection of wholeness, but I don't know what to say. And then it occurred to me, you probably have found yourself in a similar situation in different ways, where you've got an idea or a thought or a possibility and it seems interesting, but you don't quite know what to do with it. And I think I think what you do is you just live with the thought or live with the idea for a while and see what happens, rather than give up or rather than reject the idea because you thought of it in the first place. So we could take the idea or accept that you wouldn't have thought of it in the first place if you weren't supposed to do something with it. Doesn't mean that every thought you have is always going to become something big and purposeful and positive, because sometimes you discover by following a thought what you don't want. And that can be as valuable as knowing what you do want. So with this video, I'm going to talk about a past, present, and future spread. And I think if you're ever stuck and you're not quite sure what to ask, just do a past, present, and future. You pick 3 cards, 1 for the past, 1 for the present, and 1 for the future. And you look at them and you see what you make of it. But today I wanted, the thing I've been wondering about is, so I need to show you a diagram here. Okay, so let's say that is light, right? And so we can see, there's ultraviolet light that we can't see, and there's infrared that we can't see. So what we can see is kind of like that. It's a range within a bigger range. So what we see is limited because there's an awful lot that we can't see or that we don't see. And it's the same with hearing, because if you blow a dog whistle, the dog can hear it, but you can't, or we can't. So there are sounds outside the normal human range. And it's the same as smell. You get dogs at airports who run around baggage and they can smell meat and they can smell drugs and so on, packed away inside suitcases, and we can't. So I think the point is that it's easy to think that we can know everything, but in a lot of ways we can't. So the other thing is, if you get a coin and you drop a coin into water, the coin will sink. And if you get a piece of wood that's 10 times heavier than the coin, it'll float. And that can be confusing because you look and your senses tell you, wait a minute, the coin isn't as heavy as a piece of wood. How come the wood floats and the coin doesn't? So it's because it has to do with how much the weight of the water that the coin displaces. So if you put a coin, it's not very heavy, and it has to do with the weight of the water, because water is really quite heavy. Like it's a cup of water is half a pound, which is a lot. But so it has to do with it's not so much the weight, it's the amount of water that the object displaces. And if the amount of water that the object displaces is heavier than the object, it'll float. So it's not so much the weight, it's the displacement. So it's as if this is where we live, so to speak. within our senses. But maybe, and the example of the coin sinking, and it's not the weight, it's some other invisible or some concept that enables us to understand why this coin sinks. It's as if out here or beyond our senses there is truth, or there is knowledge, or there is understanding. And it may, the reason I'm talking like this is maybe this is how the tarot works, that we want to know something, and instead of only using taste, touch, smell, whatever, we use some other faculty which is outside the senses, yet it's real. In the same way that infrared is real and ultraviolet is real, but we can't see them, it doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means that we can't see them. And maybe this is what's going on with the tarot, that we have access to all knowledge, but if we just depend on our senses, we're not going to find it. And this can be why we need something like the tarot, so that you can, for instance, pick cards at random, and in some way, by picking cards at random, you're connecting with information or ideas or understanding outside the senses. It's extrasensory, but it's real. Even though you can't see it or taste it or touch it, it's real. And I think that's the point I want to make. So a while ago, so I mentioned do a yes/no spread. And so you want to know, so you do something like, you lay it out, and this is the past, and this is the present, and this is the future, and it's random, it doesn't really matter what it is, and you turn the card and get, this is you in the past, and this is you in the present, and this is you in the future. So things get better. You look at the three cards to get, oh, it's the Lovers reversed. Okay, so you look at the cards and tell a story based on the cards that come up. So the question that I want to look at is, somebody had finished a project and had handed it off to their boss, and they were quite pleased with the project and they'd done a good job. They hadn't done it before particularly, but they'd done it this time and they thought it was quite good, and they handed it off to the boss, and the boss got back to them and gave them information about what to do to fix the project. And the questioner wanted to know how to fix the project, what approach to take. So we did a past, present, future. That's the past, the two batons reversed. So what you do with a spread is, you, the reader, are asking yourself all sorts of questions, and you're using the card to answer questions that you're thinking about or wondering about. So this is the card for the past. It can describe the person in the past. It can describe how the person approached the project. It can describe what they thought the project was like. Do you know what I mean? You're wondering. It doesn't mean that the card in the past only describes the questioner, because it's more complete than that. It's more random than that. It gives you an idea. So the question, so with the first of the two batons reversed, the questioner was standing on top. Okay, they thought it was a good project, but it wasn't quite. It didn't turn out to be quite as good as they thought it was going to be, because the person here is standing, and he's standing in a high tower, and he's got the world in his hand, like he controls everything. He's in good shape, but it's upside down. It was a good project, but it wasn't quite right, and so you're maybe, so there was confidence within the individual. There was ambition as well, because you want to get to the top, or to the top of the, maybe the team, whatever it happens to be, or to produce a project, a finished product that's really good and that other people can adopt. So there's ambition, there's desire for success and so on, but it's upside down. So it didn't quite work out as you thought it was going to work out, or as you wanted, but it was good. It was good because of the nature of the card. So the second card, the card for the present, happened to be the Page of Swords. So now, this is how the questioner feels at the moment, and because the question's about how did they handle the boss's comments, with the Page of Swords, it's a page. So we can think about pages are young people who grew up to be queens, right? Knights can grow up to be kings. There's one way of looking at court cards. So at the moment, the questioner is youthful and new and inexperienced because it's a page. Because if you're young, you don't quite know what you're doing. And in the same way, it doesn't matter what age the questioner is, they're in a new space, a new area. So they shouldn't expect to know everything right now because they're represented by the page. And so with the page, because it's swords, with a sword you cut. So the question probably is, what is the question going to cut out of the report or the project, because it had to do with writing and setting up plans and so on. So they have to get rid of something. But what are they going to get rid of? And this is the challenge facing the questioner at the moment, because it's a page and it's a sword. If it had been the Page of Cups, then what is the questioner emotionally attached to with the project? Because you find that you're doing a project and you love this idea that you've got and you're attached to it and you don't want to give it up. With the Page of Cups, there would be things that you feel attached to in the project that now you've got to give up. What are you going to get rid of? Even though you don't want to get rid of it, you want to keep it. So but at the same time, even though it's a page, the questioner can be optimistic and confident, because the past is the Two of Batons, and because the Two of Batons is successful, even though it's upside down, it's successful and ambitious and capable. So it was a good project, but it wasn't quite as expected, or it wasn't quite what the questioner didn't get the response that was desired, because the boss figured out, okay, it's not quite right, you need to make some changes. And the third card was the Five of Swords. So in the future, so how is the questioner going to handle the revision of the project? They have to be three different people. They have to play different roles. On the one hand, they have to get rid of certain things. At the same time, they have to be comfortable with what they're getting rid of. And at the same time, they have to be decisive and hard-nosed and just get rid of stuff that doesn't belong, because that's the person in the front who is the victor, and they've maybe cut corners, or they've been hurtful in what they've done, but it was important, it was necessary. And the person in the background has been defeated, has been hurt. So you have to be both. You have to be serious about cutting bits of the project, even if you're attached to them. That can be the person there, and you want to keep them and you like it, but it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. And so you have to comfort yourself maybe, but also maybe you take that comforting part of you and you use it to modify the sharpness with which you want to erase or remove different parts of the project. So in the future, how do you handle the future? You maybe, instead of three roles, you're two. You have to cut, you have to let go, and you have to be happy, or you have to be comfortable with yourself, with what you're letting go of and what you're cutting. And if you want more about any of these particular, so tell me more about the past, you could always pick a card. And this would maybe give you an idea about Two of Swords, about the state of mind the questioner was in when they were writing the report or doing the project. And with the Two of Swords, they had doubts all the way through. They weren't quite sure what they were doing. So maybe the thing is, if you're in that kind of situation again, rather than try and do it all by yourself, get some feedback from other people who've already done it. because the Two of Swords is indecision. So what do? Maybe talk to people about it or ask them what they would do. And if we want more about the future, what do we do about that Five of Swords in the future? The Ace of Batons. Approach it like make a fresh start, and be active and take action to make it better or to add a bit of life to the project. And by thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to add some life to the project. What does that actually mean? So you know what the project, the question knows what the project is. So what would constitute, what would mean life? How can you give life to the project in a way to make it more vibrant, more alive, more interesting for other people? I don't know what the project is, but more interesting for other people, or more something that grabs your attention. Maybe there's a lack of oomph at the beginning. I'm about to finish here, but they say if you're doing a talk, you don't start off with an apology. And so, you don't start the talk by saying, I have to apologize for an interruption. You don't do that. You start with energy. And maybe this is what the problem is with the project. The format of the presentation isn't that vital, isn't that active, isn't that alive. So that can be what you do first, is look at the beginning, because it's an ace, look at the beginning of the project and make sure that it's got energy, it's got bounce, it's got interest, so that people will be grabbed or hooked by the beginning, and it's going to motivate them to read on. There's a thing, like in any piece of writing, the purpose of the first sentence is to get the reader to read the second sentence. And the purpose of the second sentence is to get the reader to read the third sentence. And that's one way of looking at writing. You're always making sure as best you can that the reader is going to keep reading and they're not going to give up. Okay, so that was something for 89. And as I say, I get stuck sometimes. And what do? I think you just keep persevering with it. And it will come, something will happen, or you'll understand something, or something will click, and you'll know what to do next, or you'll know why you thought of it in the first place. Okay, thanks for watching, assuming that you get to this point, and I'll see you in a few days. Okay, bye-bye.